glad to see you, man. I really am. I'm glad you could join. And I did a bit of introduction for you. But again, this is King Haize, CJ Johnson himself, and he is the owner of the B.R.E.A.K.S Media Network, as well as a creator of the Awaken Soul Pod. And I know you got some other stuff going on that I'm gonna let you speak to. But talk to us about B.R.E.A.K.S Media, the network itself. What made you create that? Was Awaken Soul Pod before B.R.E.A.K.S Media, or the other way around?
Yeah, so Awaken Soul podcast was first. That Love, Lust, and Badass Soul, and then my other podcast, the B.R.E.A.K.S Radio. And originally, we created the B.R.E.A.K.S Media as like a company to house the 3 podcasts I was on at the time. And then, of course, like over the course of like building that out and working with other creatives, it turned into a network with other creatives that I've collabed with and worked with before. Some that were new to podcasting that we've helped like curate their ideas and build podcasts for them. But ultimately, like I think my goal with the B.R.E.A.K.S Media is for it to be a slice of every different facet of our culture. I think Black culture too often gets pictured into just one thing, and we're multifaceted. And so we want to take it over everything, whether it's audio, written, or visual, because we're getting into short films. I have my first short film coming out here shortly when I get a chance to finish editing it.
Oh, that's awesome. All right.
Yeah. So.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. So you're currently working on that, or is that something that you're getting ready to release?
I'm working on. So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, the short film. That's what I was asking.
Yeah, it's something that I finished like almost right before COVID hit, and then COVID hit, and my inspiration for it completely it just stopped. If I'm being honest, like COVID had me stressed out for a minute, especially like with my kids being out of school, and so my inspiration for it is picked back up like the last couple of weeks or so. So I'm putting the final touches on it. It's probably honestly ready to release, but I'm so anal about stuff when I release it, especially when it's my first time doing a short film. I just want to make sure it's perfect, but it's going to be good.
No, that's understandable. That's understandable. When do you think it's going to be released? It's going to be during the summer?
Yeah, during the summer for sure. I'm forcing myself. So my 1-year anniversary my 3-year anniversary for the Awakened Soul is August 4th. So I'm kind of forcing myself for that to be the release date at the minimum.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I love those dates that we kind of create in our mind. Like, this is a special day, so I'm gonna make it more special by adding something else on top of it. So I respect that, man. I respect that. So I mean, that's dope. Your main, as far as your main medium to express yourself, would you say it's podcasting and audio, or it's equal across the board?
It's definitely podcasting. Video is something I've forayed to into like the last year, slowly but surely. I can see film kind of taking over it because I get to be behind the scenes and bring things to life, and like I've always been into photography, but podcasting is my passion, man. It's something about getting behind that mic that just brings out the best in me. So that's always going to be my passion.
All right, but and so when you think about the visual presence for podcasters, why do you think that's important?
I think for a lot of people, especially like there's still a lot of people who don't quite know what podcasting is, right? So I think for some people, there's that barrier of I'm listening to somebody and I don't know what they look like. I don't know their facial features or their expressions or anything. And I think at least what I found since I've gotten into video is that it eliminates that barrier for new people. Video is easier to gain new listeners because they'll see you, that they now have put a face to that voice, so it makes it easier for them to go and listen to you.
Word, that's true, man. As a matter of fact, our next offering after just July 15th, it'll be in August, and we'll be doing Latrice actually, who who reached out to you. Latrice is going to be doing a workshop on working through your visual stage fright, basically, and how podcasters really get in front of their work. I know for myself, I'm a person who really likes to be behind the scenes. So this is actually, even doing this, I'm better at it now. And I'm talking about mentally, I'm better with it. Mm-hmm. It stretches you. It gets you to start, being inside of your work in a way that says, this is mine. I own it. It's me. It's my face. It's my creativity and all those sort of things. But for a lot of people, especially in podcast and radio, it's been said before, it's like the easiest way to create and put things out there because no one has to see your face, because it's only a voice to it. So
For sure.
so yeah, I do think as we move forward, and especially with COVID disconnecting us in a lot of ways, like the festival where we were able to be with each other. Now we have to do it virtually, right? It's like there's an opportunity here to start getting ourselves in front of the camera as well, you know,
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
So I know you have a YouTube channel as well,
Mhm.
that goes along with your podcast. Tell us a little bit about that. Did the YouTube start right with the podcast, or was it something that you decided that
Oh,
needs to happen?
no, so like the way my foray into video, it started with I bought with my phone. I used to record like 15-second clips, basically of, hey, this is the topic of this week. Go check out the podcast. It evolved from that to me recording full segments and then releasing,
Mm.
and then it went to that to now the full episode is on YouTube. That's really only been probably consistently maybe the last 6 months.
Okay.
And the podcast has been around almost 3 years, but and the YouTube, you know, I mean, it's not like I get huge numbers on YouTube or anything like that. Like I said, video for me more so, I've noticed as a promotional tool is hugely
Mm-hmm.
successful and needed. But as I continue to just evolve it, it's like, why not? I'm going to be filming it anyway. I might as well put it on YouTube. So
Word, word, word. Okay, so we talked about Breaks Media, but it's an acronym, you
mhm,
know. Be real. What's it? Be real. Excel as king should. Tell us
absolutely.
about that, man.
Because I think like we're like when we started the Breaks Radio, and that's kind of where that started from. Is it was me and two other brothers, and we were trying to come up with a name. We always call it, like, we refer to each other as King. Like, we call each other, "What's
Mm-hmm.
up, King?" We text each other, "What's up, King?" And I think the realness comes in too. Like, and we want to have authenticity in everything that we do. We want to be authentic to the culture. We want to be authentic to ourselves. We want to be authentic to our families. So it's like, be real, and then we're going to excel, because when black men come together in unity, we can't be stopped. So that's the meaning behind the name. Be real, excel as King should, because when we
Word,
come together
word.
in realness, we're going
Yeah,
to achieve whatever we want to.
word. That's a fact. And is Breaks Media like a partnership, or are you like the leader of that?
It's solely on me. It
Okay.
started like it started as an idea with other creatives, and you know, like I said, we really just thought of the Berks Media as something to house our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But as it came to evolving the company and like working with other creatives, that's been basically solely me. And you know, other people, I want to give people their just due. Like, shout out to BJ from Change the Subject podcast, and Avery from Soul of a Hustler, because they came on and also helped me refine some of my ideas, and other
Word.
creatives along the way. So like, it's me doing the day to day, but it's really a collaborative effort all the way around, because that the ideas and the things that we've been able to accomplish in just a year and a half has been like, we officially launched January 2019. November 2019, we won the Pod Excellence Awards for the Best Podcast Network, and
Nice.
that's not
Congratulations.
just me. I can't
Yeah.
take credit for just that. So that's everyone
Yeah.
as a team working together.
All right. All right. Bet, man. That's what's up. Yeah. It does start out, you know, with your baby, right? Your
Mhm.
creation, and then it takes folks though, man, because it can become a lot. And people will come and people will go. You know, people will be like, "I'm riding with you," and then you find out the
Yeah,
man fell out the car somehow. You know,
exactly.
but but
Exactly.
but then somebody else, you know, somebody else will step up, and it's always wanted and needed. You know, and so what's some things that you think um, a lot of individual podcast creatives don't really understand or know about networks, podcast networks?
Well, I think unfortunately, like, networks get a bad rap because a lot of podcast networks, really, it's just people coming together and retweeting each other, reposting each other, and maybe collabing from time to time. And I was actually part of another network that's primarily what they did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left that because it was like, all right, well, how is this really helping me? So, like with the Breaks Media and like some of the other podcasts, like, we don't just retweet or repost or whatever. We actually give resources. We help
Mm-hmm.
create merch. We've taken um, the creation of the merch and the shipping of the merch. We take that on, but the podcast gets 100% of the profit. We just take
Mm-hmm.
what it took to create the shirt, and the podcast who made that sale, they get 100% of that. We also, equipment. I've bought and given mics to so many other podcasters that are on the network. And also for like live shows, we have a complete PA system, so our podcasters can do a live show in any venue they have. They don't have to have a mic system. We'll show up and we'll set it up for them. So it's actually providing resources for the people and the creators who join your platform. And I think that's what podcast networks get a bad rap, because a lot of networks just use the name network and they're not really helping to network. We kind of bridge that gap, and we want to give you more than just that.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's all about the intention behind it and the why behind it, right? And if the why is to have a name and say I did something, then that's not gonna get too far. But if the intention behind it is to really support and get people involved in this industry like we want them to be, I feel that very strongly, and it is important for if we're going to step up and say be in a space where we're saying this is my platform, this is my network, and you come on, then we have to be able to support and provide resources and be able to be a stepping stone for that podcast or that creative, right? So yeah, I definitely feel that, and there are networks who do that, and then there's networks who don't know how to do that, right? And so so that's also those learning curves, and that's kind of why we're here. Why I asked you that question, for people to understand that it's if you're with the right network, it can really be a real advantage for a lot of folks to get further together, and I think also when it comes to individual creatives in general, because we tend to work in a silo, with our heads down and not really looking for that support or collaboration, and then believe that there's no support or collaboration, even though we've never made a request for it. Then it keeps that idea of networking. It just makes that networking thing like, I don't know, because I'm doing well on my own. I'm good on my own. It kind of gets that mentality about like, am I going to have to filter my money through you or something like that? It's like it's this distrust that happens when it comes to networking. And that's also the reason for Afros and Audio and what you're doing is that there's this idea that there is support to be had, there is resources to be had, there is collaboration to be had that can really make the difference in whether you start your podcast and stay in podcasting, or you start your podcast and you're done within the year because you don't have any support, and you don't know where to look for it. So it's super important that networks have integrity, right? And mean what they say and say what they mean, like in all things. So I definitely salute you for that, bro. That's really dope. So what are some of the podcasts that you have, and are you still accepting podcasts? And if so, are there any qualifications for that?
Yeah, we're definitely always looking to collab with podcasters. We have my 3 podcasts, which I mentioned already. Poetry After Dark is another one that's on there. Dark Sugar, Technical Foul, which is the best sports podcast ever. And I say that I have to say that all together in one sentence, because I've been listening to them since before I started podcasting. So the fact that they work with me now is like crazy to me.
Yeah, they are that good. I receive that.
Yeah.
They're really good.
A few Screws Loose, which is one of the few podcasts that men are talking about mental health, and they both actually suffer from and been diagnosed with mental health issues. So you get that whole perspective of it. Is one of the best out there. Like I said, change the subject as well. I know somebody's gonna kill me because I know I'm missing a couple.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, so let's skip subjects real quick. How do people qualify? Like, what's the criteria for your particular network? Is it do you look for a specific podcast?
I think that for us, like, we really like finding podcasts that have their lane in their niche, but also like who want to learn more about podcasting than just sitting in front of mic and talk, who have interest in the business aspect, who want to actually grow and turn this platform that we're creating into some form of a business. It doesn't mean that it has to be you plan to quit and use this as your full-time income or anything like that, but to really have fun, but also be business minded and be willing to sit down in conversations and meetings to talk about your promotion, to talk about your marketing, to talk about your analytics. That's the thing I think we don't talk about enough is true analytics in podcasting. We just focus on download numbers and not analytics.
Yeah,
So to be
yeah.
open to talk about that type of thing is really, really important for anybody that I want to work with. Because I don't, I made the mistake early on in the Breaks Media of like just basically accepting anyone who wanted to come, and that was
Hmm.
fine. But then they fizzled out in 3 months, and then they were gone.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
you really have to have a passion for what you're doing in this, because if you don't have passion, you're not going to last more than a year in this.
Word. Because I think a lot of people, and that's with anything, it makes sense that people come in with high expectations for anything that they create, and that it'll be received well, and that it will go far, and it will be able to be monetized early on. But I tell anybody who will listen that podcasting is a long game. It really is, and it's about really putting yourself in it in a way that's intentional and purposeful. It can be fun as hell, but
Mm-hmm.
you're in it because you want to be in it, and knowing that this is an opportunity, especially for Black podcast creatives, to record. This is like our history in real time.
Yeah,
No one else is able to manipulate what we're saying, change the narrative. It's really about us being able to tell our own lived experience, tell our own perspectives, and it'll go down in history. It's like your audio will last forever.
exactly.
And so it's really important. It's really important that we have more Black podcasters in the marketplace, and like you said, around any and all topics, because Black people run the gamut. We're so different. We're so varied, and so exactly, we're storytellers, original griots, right? And so it's about being able to orate our stories, orate our history, and it's so important. It really is so important for us to find this as that space to speak, to tell our truths, right? And so that brings me to the next question and thought about, podcasting as resistance, right? As creativity as resistance, especially in this climate that we're in right now. And I know that you've done quite a few things, man, on your Awakened Soul pod, and other things, where you are really getting down to whether social commentary about the current state of the world, your own personal life. I heard you, talking and giving a tribute to your cousin. These type of things that are so important, that not only is personal but also social. It's also for the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so what's your take on that? Why do you think podcasting is really important when it comes to that sort of aspect?
I think because podcasting is like really the only true form of media right now. Like, well,
Hmm.
YouTube can be too, because we don't have that filter of having to worry about a parent company or a larger company. Like, podcasting is where people can really be their true raw selves and give their
Hmm.
true thoughts and not have to worry about, like, you shouldn't. And I tell everybody that if you feel like you got to filter yourself on your podcast, then you're not doing it right, because
Right.
that's where you get the rawness. Like, for me, that's where I'm most vulnerable, because I don't have to worry about people like being in the public or whatever. Like, it's out there in the public, but the public isn't here in my house when I'm talking about it. So I think
Yeah.
that barrier of getting my thoughts, and like I can literally have a thought and come down here in my studio and record without having to wait. And so you
Hmm.
get that rawness. Like, we almost all, like, I watch news, I watch everything and stuff, but like I respect and almost trust things that I hear on podcasts more often, of course, depending on the host and the source,
Right.
because it's just raw. And I think people enjoy that. People like feeling like you, like, I always have the saying with podcasts, like, people may come for the content, but they'll stick with your podcast because of their attachment to you.
Yeah.
And we're building attachments through those type of means. And I think that's why podcasting has just been so amazing and is steadily blowing up.
Yeah. No, that's a fact. It shouldn't be any people pleasing inside of this podcasting and your own audio, because it truly is your place to express, as you said, and that's what I love about it as well, is that you know podcasting is not in a space where there's all these gatekeepers, right?
Yeah.
It's not radio and television where the barriers are already set up, and it's coming, like they're trying to lock it down.
Mhm.
But as far as the freedom inside of this particular medium, it's still there, and it's up to us what we're going to do with it, right? And so again, that's the point. That's the point. I'm sure Breaks Media that's the point of Afros and Audio, is that we get to build this table, design our lanes, do everything, and they can come if they, we can invite you to sit down with us. But we don't have to go and sit down with y'all. It's just not that type of party. And but it's up to us, right? It really is up to us what we're gonna do with it. And I think we're doing a damn good job, right? I really do. But it's important. It's important. So you have created space for a lot of different folks to come on and speak their truth. Right now we have a lot of different aspects in the world. I just before I got on this call with you, or IG Live, I'm old. I'm talking about call. I say telephone and recording equipment. Yeah, just video recording. but I just saw it was on B.R.E.A.K.S came up on my screen, and it was talking about the LGBTQ month ending, and how right at the end of it, over 5 trans women were murdered. And so it's like, you provided the space. I'm looking for, I wrote it down. So like you had Tony Bryce on your show to talk about transphobia. And so a lot of people, again, it becomes a part of why, we have a certain audience, and we want to make sure that they're happy and that they're okay, and that I'm not coming out with left field with something that they might not respect or accept. But like, who gives a shit, right? It's your opportunity to do what you want to do, So like, what is it about you and your voice that makes you say, you know what, this is my platform, and whatever I want to do on this platform, I get to do on this platform? And how do you encourage other podcast creators to do the same?
I think, like, when you look at it, I'm really big on legacy, and I think and openness and honesty. And like, with my platform, what I create is like, even with the deconstructing transphobia, I got some crazy ass responses to that, and I knew I was going to
believe it.
But that was the point, is because I think people are afraid to ask the questions, and so I wanted to create a space where people could come and learn, because I was learning myself. I was learning myself on that, and I think for me, I just don't care like what people think, because this is my platform. I created this. I put the work into this every day. This is going to be what lives long past me. And I think overall, like, when I'm dead and gone, and my kids can pick up and listen to this podcast, I want them to see that the dad was somebody who didn't have all the answers, but I damn sure tried to get them. You feel me? So I think that's where it comes from. And we're so fearful of stuff like being judged and being talked about or whatever. And at the end of the day, for me, it just was about, look, I want to learn. Trans women at that time were being murdered at an alarming rate, and like, we're just not talking about it. As Black men, we're like afraid for people to think we like trans women, for us to support it, and it's ridiculous to me. So and so for me, I really wanted to give a space where a Black man, a cis hetero black man, can have a conversation with a trans woman and it not be anything weird. We're just sitting down talking. And so I think that was important. So
no, it is. It is. And I think it's also important to have 2020 conversations, It's like, like having evolved conversations, and really seeing what our world is like, and have that be an opportunity where I read something recently that said, as we talk about police, right, and defunding them and or revamping them, we'll touch on that. But I read something that said the police force should look like the population, right? Every single person that exists inside of a community should be represented inside the police force. And that's like a no-brainer, but it's just not the way it is, right? So it's real like that in all places. It's in the school system, right? It should work like that in the school system, in the hospitals, in the court system, wherever it is, where the people should be represented inside of that, inside of that industry. And so that's something definitely, obviously, it needs to happen in the police force. And as we deal with so much, we're dealing with the murder of Black men and women, right? We're dealing with the disrespect and that sort of thing. And our world is upside down because of it. And I think COVID has really helped us to deconstruct the construct, right? Half of this shit is just bogus as hell. And
Facts.
it's part of my language if anybody's worried about it, but this is my shit. So, um, so, but yeah, it's like now we're sitting in a space where we're like, okay, half this shit is bogus, and I don't got nothing to do tomorrow. So here I am, disrupting, making sure that the voice is heard. And so that's important. It's important that we're also talking about that inside of this space that we're in, inside of this audio, this medium of audio. And so what's your take on that? Like, what do you think about the conversation? And if there's any podcast episodes you have where you talked about defunding, demilitarizing the police, what is your take on that, at current state?
I haven't talked about that on my podcast yet, honestly, because
Okay.
I'm doing more like research. I'm a heavy researcher before I talk about anything because I like to like talk about it and also offer suggestions and solutions. But I think that like the blue line is a real thing, right? And so like when that's a real thing and it's like low key the biggest gang in America, you kind of understand it. Like we're funding the exact people who are oppressing us. There's an
Right.
issue in that. So I can understand it completely. And I think to go off your earlier point of everybody in that community needs to have a representation in the police department. Yeah, because and I know police officers. I actually was working on an episode to interview police officers before COVID happened, and there are some that are put in these neighborhoods that were never from these neighborhoods, never had any background, so they're afraid. That doesn't make everything right, but they're not even being educated the correct way themselves. So like
Yeah.
something needs to change. The system is if the last hundreds of years haven't showed us that the system is not set up correctly, that there's an issue there, and something needs to happen. Now, defund the police. If that's the only solution we can come up with, then so be it. Now, if we can come up with something that
Yeah.
meets in the middle, I'm fine with that too.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think what you see now with protests, people are fed the hell up with this shit, and it's going to just keep getting worse. It's going, and it needs to. It needs to. So I'm glad that the conversations are happening. I'm glad that people are pushing it forward and talking about it because, for so long we were afraid to talk out because then we would have got targeted by the police, right?
Yeah.
And so now with social media being what it is and everything being able to be recorded, people can now talk more freely, and God forbid somebody does try to attack them because then it's just going to stir shit up even more. So these conversations need to keep happening.
Yeah. And it's like anything, once you have all these people kind of speaking the same thing, on the same track, it's like the movement. They say you can take out an individual, but you can't kill the movement, right? And so that's what we're in right now. And I think unlike any time before, where we were so connected with getting right back to the status quo, right back to work, right back to school, right back to all of these things. Because you touched on it earlier, and when we talk about networking, we talk about support and resources and collaboration. There's a scarcity mindset that like takes over so many people in this world, and it makes us believe that if we speak out, if we do this, then we're going to lose what we have. But I'm a coach, so I tell people, sometimes you have to give up what you have to get what you want, right?
That's true.
Because that's the only way things happen. And so giving up some of these things that we think is this false sense of security or protection or what have you, it's all very false. We've learned that now. COVID taught it to us, and then this once again being in this insurrection has taught us how bogus a lot of this shit is that we live and believe every day, right? And so I think there's absolutely a space for us as podcast creators. And it's interesting, and that's why I brought up the 2020 conversations, right? Because most Black folks as creatives have been almost held to a standard that we must be political, right? That we can't just talk about anything that comes to mind, that we can't just, talk about the things that make us happy, make us come up, feel alive, that we're interested in, whatever it is, and that we have to be political. And that's not true. That's not true. But unfortunately, our lives kind of dictate that there are often things that occur that makes us have to speak up, right? That makes us have to address a certain issue. And so And so why I don't think that in 2020, Black creatives, my daughter's 21, she's a creative. I don't want her to have to constantly be thinking politics when she's just trying to express herself freely,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But she gets political because it is what it is. And so what's your thoughts on that as far as the fine line between, you know, having this platform, having your podcast, and wanting to do the things that interest you and not even want to deal with that dark shit, but that dark shit is something that is ever present, and therefore we have to kind of lend a voice to it every once in a while.
I completely understand when people feel like they don't know how to start that conversation. Or do they really want to bring that to their platform, especially depending on the type of content that they cover? It just may not fit it. But I think when certain things go on and things get as tense as what they have been lately, your listeners are going to want to know your opinion on it. I don't care if you have a podcast that's about General Hospital, a soap opera that you do every day. Like, at some point, the people who listen to you, because again, it goes back to what I said before, people stay with podcasts because of their attachment to you. It's not necessarily the content. So because they feel attached to you as a host, they're going to naturally think, I wonder what she feels about this. Now you have to kind of present that in a way and do it that's genuine and true to you. If you do it, and it doesn't always have to be in the midst of your content. Maybe it's just using your social media platform, but those people are going to want to know how you feel about stuff when it's going on. It's just it's the right time and the right place for everything. I understand it when people are timid to go into it. I understand the people who are just like, I just want to create. This is my happy place. I don't want to bring the dark stuff into my happy place. But at the same time, you can't be guilted for that if you want to keep it that way. But I would just feel like at some point everybody's convicted to say something, because it's like you said, it's dark times, and it's something that us as Black people inherently carry a form of PTSD that almost no other race has to deal with. That's almost in us genetically. So it comes out sometimes in times that we don't expect it and wouldn't foresee it. So
and we end up and it goes back to the pleasing your audience, stuff like that, and that's a no-brainer. There's an audience for every single person. I don't give a shit what you're talking about. You know, I could be talking about knitting, and there's a whole group of Black folk that are like, hell yeah, that's what I want to listen to, right? So you know, but we tend to, we are policed, and then we get in our head and we begin to police ourselves, you know? And that's when we can definitely go wrong and lose the authenticity within our platforms, within our voice, and all those type of things. And that's not, you know, that's not okay. But I understand that, you know, for the most part, especially when you start out your podcast, and this is just a message because we're talking to the creatives, right? We're talking to the podcast creatives. And so there's a sense of finding your voice inside of podcasting, right? So you don't have to come in and know exactly your stance on everything and how you're going to present it. I always say start. That's how you finish. So start your podcast, get into it, begin to learn, you know, the people that are listening to you, receive the feedback that you're getting, because your audience is super important to your relevance and your sustainability. But also respect your voice, respect those things that come up for you. Anything that you say, nah, I shouldn't say that, but it's come up for you, it's you. Speak your truth, tell your truth, because there's somebody out there listening who's actually waiting for you to be genuine and truthful. And it supports them as you're supporting yourself and providing that voice that's authentic to you and genuine to you. So how do you encourage like your podcast? I know, do you ever, when you have podcasts join your network, are they ever new to the game, or are they experienced? And do you have to support them in finding their voice and sticking to being authentic?
No, there have been a few that joined that were really new. Some actually started with the network. Some maybe were like a couple of episodes in. And you do have to encourage them, like, because you know you get those typical questions like, oh, well, should I have said this? Should I have said this? Say whatever's true to you. Like, don't. I always encourage people to not really have a filter with their own platform. Like, respect your audience and they'll respect you. Respect your content, it'll respect you and take you far in the long run. But you have to be genuine in this. And because there's just so much bullshit out in the world, right? Everything we see, we got to worry about what agenda a certain news outlet has or not. And people come to podcasts because it's something that they can pick up and listen to, when they want to, but also it cuts through the bullshit. Like, yeah, celebrity podcasts are like, as more celebrities get in the game, the podcast game gets more watered down. But that's what makes it, when they find these smaller podcasts, that's the sweet spot, because they don't have to worry about that. So like when new podcasters come on and they're trying to find their style, I always tell them, like, listen back. It's like you're a coach. So it's like watching game tape, right? Listen to your first 5 episodes, go back and really critique what you did and didn't do. And I always tell, like, if new podcasts join, I'm like, all right, I give it 10 episodes, and after 10 episodes, I'm gonna really come to you with a list of stuff, and we're gonna see what we can do. So I think really come and critique it, and also to, like, don't be afraid to flip the switch. Don't be afraid to be like, look, this wasn't working the way I thought it was going to. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's choose a different direction. I think some podcasters get so caught up in sounding like a podcaster that then they lose their own voice, because they're trying to sound like what they think a podcaster should sound like, and people don't want that. They want you.
Absolutely. And I see this Kim Trail's podcast says they steal from smaller podcasts.
Definitely.
And they do. They people steal from every damn thing. You'll hear underground rappers, and you hear the main rapper doing their little bit, or their whatever gimmick somebody else has. But regardless, we have to keep creating, right? And then there's also those ways to protect your podcast, and that's the importance of really knowing what you're getting involved in, and also being willing to learn the business part of it, because there's an entrepreneurial spirit inside of podcasting. Really, it is. And so, with like any entrepreneur, like any business, it's important that you learn certain aspects of it to not only protect your intellectual property, but also be able to put those things in place where if there's somebody else who's saying the same thing as you, your own version of the Beehive can go after them. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever that looks like. But again, we have to still continue to create, because what if that's like the counter attack in making us stop creating, right?
Definitely.
And so we don't want that. We get to continue to create. We get to continue to show up, and nobody can be you, period. So they might use your same words, use your same angle, use your same thought process around it, but they're not you, and they'll never deliver it the same way that you do. And your fans will never leave you for somebody's voice that's inauthentic. And so it's important that you stick with what you do and who you are. So we are definitely coming down to the end of this. I really appreciate the time that you spent with me, man. I'm glad we finally got here. As a matter of fact, we might not be, because I started this early. I'm just checking the time, because Instagram don't play with you, and they'll cut your ass off in 60 minutes. So I definitely want to, before we go, tell people how to find you. Again, your Instagram handles, as well as your URLs.
Yeah, you can follow me at CEO Haize on Twitter. It's at The King Haize, and Haize is spelled Haize. You can go to thebreaksmedianetwork.com, where you can find my podcast and all the podcasts on my network. You can email me at theawakensoulpod@gmail.com. And then lastly, I do have a hotline set up. You can call me. It's business, and it's for podcast related stuff. It's 614-547-2039.
Nice. Well, and so for some of the fellas on here, you have a great chin of hair, and some people want to know, what's your secret and stuff like that. So, if you wanna share that, I don't know if you put it on your podcast at all.
I mean, I am the red bearded assassin. I take good care of my beard. What I use basically Scotch Porter everything. I love that brand.
Me too, bro. Word, love it.
Scotch Porter is the truth. Like I was on Shea Moisture for a while, and it did my beard really good. But I found that like my beard's grown in thicker and been more healthier on Scotch since I moved over to Scotch Porter solely, and that it just works wonders for me.
Yeah, Scotch Porter is the business, man. I love them. I do. Me too. All right, so before we go, because I do think we have a little bit of time, and we touched on police brutality. We touched on the murders of trans women and stuff like that. And I know that you, just as well as I am, where people are big proponents and advocates for the people, right? And wanting to see us not only win, but overthrow I'm just joking. But overthrow, the bullshit, right? And so, you know, I know you have a daughter as well. And you did a podcast episode with her, which was super dope.
Yeah.
And so what made you do that?
I think well, my daughter is a creative like me. Like she loves photography. She's probably one of the best draws I've ever seen in my life at her age. But also like me and my daughter, I don't believe in having like just surface level conversations. Me and my daughter have deep conversations, and I encourage her to ask me anything that's on her mind and to hold me accountable. And she wanted to be on. She's been on the podcast when she was younger, but she wanted to be on again. And I told her, I was like, all right, I want you to come up with the questions or the topics that you want to cover. I'll fill in the gaps between that, but this is your episode. And when she came back with the questions she wanted to answer or ask me, they were deep. And so like I was like, wow, is this
Nice.
really where you want to go? She was like, yeah. I said, let's do it. And so
Yeah.
I don't hold back. And so like she asked me some stuff and brought up some stuff as a parent with me. I always talk about, and I'm very open with talking about the fact that when I was younger, I dealt with anger issues because of my parents' divorce. And she, like, I think went through a lot of the same things because me and her mom split. And so she wanted to talk about it. And so
Mm-hmm.
we dug in there. And it was my
Yeah.
daughter, my oldest daughter is honestly one of the most emotionally aware people, regardless of age, that I know in my whole
Mm-hmm.
entire life. And so that conversation is like, and I still to this day get emails and they're like, you helped me talk to my daughter. You helped me talk to my father over some stuff that we never really talked about. And that's probably my favorite episode, favorite thing I've ever done creatively. Period.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, I have an amazing daughter as well, so I completely understand that. And so same sentiment, everything, man. Everything you said, I don't totally agree, as well as the parent that I am with her. And so we as we wrap up, you know, we're dealing with right now, especially over social media, Black women don't feel protected, right? Don't
Mm-hmm.
feel protected by Black men, and it's a serious conversation, as well as a conversation that doesn't really need much defense or offense, because just as much well as Black women can express that, it's the same
Mm-hmm.
way that they could not express it if it wasn't true, right?
Yeah.
And so there's definitely you know, aspects of this conversation that we get to, as Black men, respond to in a holistic and positive way, but also recognizing that for every one of us who believe that we protect Black women, right, in our lives, and even the women that may not be in our lives, there absolutely needs to be more, because without that, then there's obviously this disparity where they may feel protected some days and they don't feel protected other days, and that's a problem. And
Yeah.
so, you know, how can we, not only from our own platforms, but what's the kind of conversation that you are having about this, and what's your thoughts about it,
And
since that's like one of the major things people are talking about right now?
it's funny because like, and this isn't just like meant to be a plug, but I did a whole series. It was a 3-part series called Who Protects the Protect Her. And so I had 3 different
Okay.
women on each episode, and we talked about physical protection, emotional protection, and then relationship protection within relationships. And it was a series like before this conversation blew up in social media and everything that was kind of built around that. But I think ultimately, uh, a couple of things were throughout the series that women brought up that I brought on is that we need to hold our brothers accountable, because I think sometimes as men we get worried about getting that label of, oh, you being a bitch right now or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't hold our brothers accountable for how they treat women. But
Yeah.
then more importantly than anything, we need to listen to them. Women very openly tell us what they need, and sometimes we get so caught up in thinking that we're already doing that we don't know how we can strengthen and do it better. Maybe you are
Right.
a physical protector, and you do protect women, or you're doing the best job that you think you can do about it. But we're still men. We don't understand. We don't know what goes on, and we, just like women can't always understand the troubles we go through, we aren't always going to have the answers for what they go through if we're not listening to them. So I think
Yeah.
ultimately, like, and especially the women in your life, you need to listen to them, because you can think you're doing a great job, but be missing certain things, and it's not intentional. It's just that you don't understand it. You don't have that knowledge already in you. So we need to ask those questions and listen. Women will tell you how they need to be protected. Women will tell you if you're doing a good job. Well, some would more so tell us what we're not doing than what we are doing. But you have to have those conversations with the people that are in your life and do a better job. But it really starts with iron sharpens iron. We need to hold our
Yeah.
brothers accountable for the crap that they do, because
Yeah.
like for years we've been just letting it slide by, not wanting to be the guy who gets called out or whatever by other men. But we got to stop it. We got to stop it. The
Yeah.
cat calls
Yeah.
XYZ. We have to stop and stand up for our women when we see them in situations, and not just think that they got it, and not just think that they're okay because our mothers were okay. Like, speak up loudly, as loud as
Yeah.
we speak for our sports teams. If we can sit there and argue all day about if LeBron's better than Michael Jordan, we should be able to have those same conversations as loudly for our Black women.
Yeah, that's a fact, man. Feedback is real, bro, and it's feedback. So
yeah.
it is not being brought up for no reason. And so so I do think that's super important, just like you said. And you know, I've in my work that I do a lot of work with men and young men, and I've basically said go home, or talk to whomever, whatever woman, and ask her flat out, do you feel protected by me?
Yeah.
And allow her to speak her piece. And if she says no, then you got some work to do. Period.
Exactly.
You know, and even if you have evolved and grown, at some point we fucked this shit up. You know, at some point we have all failed in some way with a Black woman, and that's something that we get to receive and work on, because this is our community, man. It really is. And we're only as good as each other, right? When we think about how our society is going right now, we think about the amount of like evictions that are about to happen and that sort of thing. And if we're not involved in supporting our people, but we're good, like I'm good in my home, guess whose door getting kicked in? Because I got all my shit over here. But I'm watching you out the window like, oh shit, you know, they you know, that's not okay, right? And so that's all of us. That's all of us. This is our collective community, whether it's Black women that need protecting, or poor people who need protecting, or trans women that need protecting, or Black men who need protection. We all are fighting to be heard, and it's really important that we don't think of ourselves on two different sides of the fence, because we're really on one side fighting against the same bullshit. It's just been the mind tricks have been real, right? And so I think, especially in audio, especially in our platforms, we get to have these real conversations and have space for both sides. It's one of the things that, again, these 2020 contemporary conversations that we get to start having, and I definitely commend you for having them. I think, you know, you're, from what I've seen, what I've heard, man, that you're a dope father, you know, definitely dope leader inside the podcast industry and what you're doing. And I appreciate your time tonight, man. And I hope that you're coming back for the festival in a big way, and I'm going to show up and bring your network, bro, because it's important. It's important that we show up, continue to add value in the space, and not leave the space. Because again, what if that's what they want us to do? You know, is leave the space, and that's not what we're here for at all. So yeah, man, that's pretty much it, bro. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk again. Before we go, I wanted to again plug. And by the way, tell us those 3 episodes one more time about the Black women conversation.
It's called.
So people can find it.
They're all Who Protects the Protect Her. It's volumes 1, 2, and 3. They were released. Oh, don't get me the line. I believe it was around April. No, it was actually earlier than that. It was about February, March when I started that series. So it's not all 3 episodes in a row. There's like some other episodes between there, but it's Who Protects the Protect Her series.
All right, bet. And it's on the Awakened Soul pod.
Yes, sir. On the Awakened Soul.
Got it. All right, awesome. So before we go, again, thank you so much, Haize, for joining us. July 15th, next Wednesday, we'll be having our podcast, Novice Tech Talk, and we'll have Conscious from Bonfire Radio, Wise Gazette from Indie Creative Network, as well as Africa Hannibal, who owns a Black, not a Black, I'm sorry, she Black, but B.R.E.A.K.S Studios in Brooklyn, New York. It's going to be a super dope conversation. Registration is free, and it's the link is in our bio. And the next weekend, next Wednesday after that, the 22nd, we'll have Lance John from Gifted Sound Networks. We'll be talking more about his work in professional live streaming, him and his team, as well as the network. And thank you again, brother. I really appreciate your time. I'm glad. And thank Xavier for his phone, man.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
All right.
All right, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Peace.
Peace.